Hi, and we've got Alice Olenek joining us today. She is a candidate heading into the Georgia State Republican Convention. She is a candidate for the first vice chairman position. Alice, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, what part of the state do you live in, and what congressional district would that be?
We live in the Harbin section of Decula, part of Gwinnett County, but the part that still has cows, horses, goats, and etc. And we are in the 10th congressional district.
Awesome. One thing we love to do with Editorial Interchange is highlight local economies. We don't do paid promotions, but we love to give shout outs to locally owned businesses. What's one or a couple in your area that you'd like to recognize?
Well, we have a brand new, it's called Decula Diner that just opened this week. It's off of Liam Road. That the couple that own that business also owns my big fat Greek taverna. I think that's how you say it. They come from Greece. It's all fresh food, freshly cooked. It's fantastic. I can't wait to try their new restaurant, the Decula Diner. And we have a family business. It's a personal care chemical company that makes intermediate patented products for big companies like Coppertone, et cetera. And that's called Surfatech, and that's in Lawrenceville, Georgia. So
Awesome. Well, thank you. If you're in the area and you're hungry, look up the diner. And if need any chemical type of situation, you know who to call. It's the PhDs over at their business. Let me ask you, why did you decide to get involved in state politics? What's the impetus for jumping in?
well, I've been on the Gwinnett County Board of Registrations and Elections for over 12 years, but I've been a state committee member. I've been a Republican, lifelong Republican, coming from New Jersey. That's not an easy thing to be as a Republican in New Jersey. So I always was involved in the party, not so much maybe 20 years ago, but since then, once our sons, we have three sons, started getting older and stuff, it was easier to get involved with politics.
What tell us about your experiences on the election board. What did you do in relation to that? How did that go? What did you have anything that you were concerned about with elections?
Well, it was in 2012. I was asked, there was an opening on the elections board, and I was asked by Bruce Lavelle, who actually now works for Donald Trump in the Black Coalition. He was chairman of Gwinnett County at that time, and we knew him personally. And he actually asked my husband whether I would be interested in it or not. And Tony told him that, yeah, Alice would love to get involved. I wanted to for basic two reasons. My mom, when she first voted in Jersey City, New Jersey, when her first time she went to vote, someone had voted for her. And this was years ago when they had like the big book that you had to sign every time there was an election. And her dad told her, if you make a fuss about this, I'll never work again. He was a mason, a bricklayer. So she always would tell us about that story and say that she was disappointed that she couldn't vote the first time around. And the second time around that with elections is we're talking deep blue, navy blue, New Jersey, Jersey City, Democrat politics. And my grandfather had died, and my dad and I actually went to our local precinct and we stood there for several hours making sure my grandpa didn't vote when he had passed on. And they told us at 7 o'clock we had to leave, and we had to leave. And lo and behold, we looked it up later on, and my grandpa did vote, even though he had
Hmm.
passed away. So elections are very important, personally important to me. And no matter what party you are, one person, one vote. And we should make it as um, good of an election as possible, you know. So that's why I really got involved and got into it and started reading the code book about all the different laws. And it's been an adventure for plus years now, especially going into 2020. That was a different experience, let's put it that way. And since then, and changing election law and seeing what laws should be changed and which ones would be receptive by legislators to actually change. But that's why I love being on the board of registrations and elections. At times, it's extremely frustrating trying to get people who don't live in Gwinnett County anymore, don't even live in Georgia, getting them off the voter registration lists. We don't call it a roll, we call it a list, can be challenging. So.
Did you find that elections in Gwinnett County were run smoothly? Were there ever any problems with elections in Gwinnett County that, related to either technology or interference from groups or individuals? How did elections flow in Gwinnett?
Elections flowed pretty smoothly prior to 2020. And then, I mean, there were some lawsuits and things on the state level against the DRE machines because they didn't have a paper backup. And um, in 2019 is when the Secretary of State's office decided to change the machines. All right. I think part of that came from a lawsuit that they had to change some of the machines. Went to a convention down in Jekyll Island, had a whole lot of companies there demonstrating a lot of their machines. Some were just paper, some were the Dominion machine and ESNS machines and other companies' machines. We got to play with a few of them. But as far as I knew, no one that actually worked elections, even the Gavrio people, had much input into what machines that we should purchase and use, because the law in Georgia says that every 159 counties, every county will vote the same way. So we all had to have machines. So the 2019, not knowing what we were going to buy, and the Secretary of State's office didn't sign a contract until the summer of 2019. Now you have to realize we have 159 counties, and in Gwinnett County, currently we have 643,000 registered voters. So you need a lot of machines, and you have a lot of polling places. And my fear, and it came true, was that we were not going to get enough machines, voting machines, on time for the presidential primary in 2020. We did not start receiving machines, and they were the printers, or what we got first, were the end of March 2020. And then the ballot marking devices started showing up. So we had the printer and the ballot marking device. Then we got the scanners that we had to have. And there's two different types of scanners. So, and Gwinnett County Board approved money from the budget to buy additional, because you only get so many from the Secretary of State's office. And we knew we were going to need more than that. But because we didn't get the machines until March, April, and May, and we had a presidential primary kept getting pushed by the Secretary of State, there wasn't a lot of time for training on those machines. For board members or for staff. And staff would have to be trained first, obviously, because they're the ones that have to use all of the equipment. And I think that's what started the problems of the 2020 election. We had brand new machines. We had COVID. We had lockdown. We had ballot drop boxes, which to this day, I do not like. I do not want. They should never have been codified into law. Um, And I had an argument with the Secretary of State over those ballot drop boxes, just reading the law books. It didn't say any, it said you could mail them absentee by mail ballots, you could mail them back, or you could bring them to your elections office. You could hand them in at the elections office. There was no mention whatsoever as for a metal box that sat on a corner somewhere, kind of like a post office box. So, but that's when things started. And then there was so many groups that were suing. I've been sued a lot, and So it just, 2020 was an interesting year. And then it was also interesting in 21 because of the senatorial election. So, yeah, but that was after being on the board for several years and then all of a sudden walking into 2020 and the recount and the lawsuits that the Trump campaign had, and waiting for a judge to decide whether or not our machines were impounded for a while. And so I learned an awful lot about what needed to change in Georgia during 2020.
Well, I hate to say this, but you're the second interview I've done this month who have had voter fraud as part of the interview. We had a gentleman earlier that I interviewed, and he said that somebody had voted for him up in Alpharetta, and he couldn't cast a vote. It's not a good sign when you keep having people that you're interviewing keep
Well,
citing cases of voter fraud.
well, mine were years ago, and they weren't in Georgia; they were in New Jersey. But I understand where we've had people in Gwinnett County also call and say, I went to vote and I couldn't vote. And a lot of that was the poll pad, because especially during early voting, because they have to find you. And it could be there's a Steve Brown, there could be a Steve Brown Sr., there could be a Steve Brown Jr., and they had to manually click on the name. And if they chose the wrong one, then they got credit for voting and you didn't.
Right.
So,
Right.
and I think that's terrible, but I mean, there's a whole discussion about, well, it's only one or two votes. It doesn't make a difference. Well, to that person that's voting, it makes a big difference.
Well, and in some county and city elections, especially in smaller areas with smaller populations, 8 votes can decide an election. You can actually lose by, just a handful of votes. So I think that's something we really have to pay attention to. Um,
Well,
you
we
know,
also have to pay attention to there's 159 counties.
right.
So if you have 50 fraudulent votes, and I'm not saying that there are, but if the systems are not secure enough and you have, let's say, 50 in each county, that's enough to change outcomes in smaller races.
Sure.
So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I have been told that the first vice chairman and some of the other positions further down the rank um, don't really have a job description. You kind of work at the pleasure of the chairman. Um, what would you want the first vice chair doing should you get elected? Is there something in particular that you would like to take on as a task?
yes, but let me explain. The first vice chair actually does have a duty according to the rules of the Georgia GOP. Second vice chair, no. First vice chair is to do whatever project, handle whatever project the chairman decides to give you. And hopefully they do give the first vice chair a project. And second is to take over and to do the job of chairman if the chairman is unable to fulfill his duties. All right. And in one of the forums I was at, um, everybody was asked this. And I said, well, when I throw one of them off the cliff, then I become chair, trying to explain what the first vice chairman is supposed to do. But the reason why I got into this race is after watching and looking and analyzing the outcomes of Donald Trump's 2024 election. He won by 115,117 votes. Okay. And he had 2,663,117 votes. And I was like, there is no way, unless we have a very charismatic candidate for governor or for U.S. Senate, that we're going to be able to have 2,663,000 ballots cast for a Republican. And we don't even know who those people are. I mean, we don't register by Republicans or Democrats, so therefore we don't have their names, their addresses. I mean, you can pull up um, whether someone pulled a Republican ballot in a primary, but a lot of people don't vote in primaries. So how are we going to find the 2 million people that voted for Donald Trump? How are we going to engage them, energize them, educate them that how important it is for the state of Georgia to stay red and not turn blue? Most of everything that we have done in the past few years, especially with elections, if the Democrats take control, they're going to throw them all away. And so everything would have been for naught. And so my project, and I have spoken to congressional district chairman and county chairman. My thing will be, I will go and I will visit as many places as I can, and I'm not coming to train anyone. Um, in my opinion, all right, I train a lot of poll workers. I do adjudicators. I do absentee ballot monitors. I train them in how to do that. But when you train someone, when you come into a county and you train them, it's kind of like you're telling them they don't know what they're doing. The counties know what they're doing, and each county has a different need and a different problem. I want to come into the counties and say, what are you trying to do? What is your problem? And how can I help? And how can we come up together with a plan on getting more people out to vote, of having people in your county, in your district, realize that they really are Republicans, that they cherish life in all stages, that they are for freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, that they want lower taxes, that they want smaller government, they want more freedoms in their life. They want schools that are going to do a classical education on their children, for their children, and not have any um, strange philosophy going through the schools. And if you educate the masses that that's really a Republican, even if you don't call yourself a Republican, I mean, I've had people that have voted Democrat for practically all their life and then finally say, you know what? I'm not really a Democrat. I align more with Republicans. We need to do that in all parts of the state. We need to increase our members. We need to increase our money because you need money to run campaigns. It doesn't run on its own. And we need volunteers, and we need people to be energized to go out and keep Georgia red. And that's why I'm running for first vice chair.
And for the delegates who are going to be at the state convention who are watching this interview, what is your personal skill set that you bring to the table for the executive level of the Georgia Republican Party that you think would be most beneficial?
Okay, I like to analyze things and see how programs or what is needed or if the programs need to be tweaked. I'm a doer. I've never been the chairman of a county party because our rules say that to stay on the elections board, I can't be an officer of the county. But I've done everything that the chairman, the secretary, the treasurer, everything has done. I have fundraisers, events. I've taken over treasury positions. I've done secretarial positions. I've lobbied with legislators. I've basically done everything. But my strengths, I think, are actually action of what I can do and what I will do and what I can accomplish. I mean, it means a lot for someone to try, but you also have to be successful. And one of my strengths is that if I tackle a project, I will succeed in that project. So the delegates and the voters of Georgia, the delegates, the Republican Party of Georgia, if I become the first vice chair, they will know that I will come and help them. I will work on projects. I will. And one of my pet peeves is why do we have fundraisers only in Atlanta? We have so many people that live outside the metro area that are loyal Republicans, that vote Republican, that are not members of the party. We need to have events that say thank you so much. I mean, in a hayfield, in a farming area, up in the mountains, in a gold rush festival, at a city park somewhere. But we need to say thank you to the people that will actually take the time out of their day and vote Republican and keep Georgia red. The small business owners, to me, And every time I've gone to rural counties in the state, and I can say this, I have a brand new minivan. I love minivans. I've already put 3,300 miles on it, and it's only 2 months old. I've been driving all over. So, and they say that they feel forgotten. They will not be forgotten with me as first vice chair. Absolutely not. If they have an issue, even if I don't agree with their issue, I will state it at the table of what the issue is for certain parts of Georgia. And we'll set out a plan to try to figure out how to either help that issue or make that issue go away. But that's what my strengths are. My strengths are I'm a worker. I will get work done.
Tell us about the most influential person in your life.
Oh, I would say my parents, both of them died when I was younger. I mean, I was a young mom when my mom died, and then I was, 8 years later, my dad died. And I think their the morals and their work ethic that they instilled in me, I think um the best part the best part of me. I would have to say that the sacrifices they made. I grew up in an inner city in Jersey City, New Jersey, and my dad was an auto mechanic. My mom was a school librarian at a Catholic school, at our Catholic school, and she stayed home when my grandma had a stroke. And back then you didn't have assisted living facilities, so my mom took my grandma in, so she had to take care of her, so she couldn't work anymore. So they sacrificed a lot to put my sister and myself and my brother through Catholic school, because the school system in Jersey City wasn't the finest in the world, and I'll just put it that way. And I really think the work ethic that they gave me and watching them sacrifice for us has instilled in me those same qualities.
What's your most cherished childhood memory?
Oh, I don't know, because I just said, you know what? Snow. I would say snow. We used to go outside. My mom had a philosophy of you had to have fresh air every single day. So we're having a blizzard one time. In fact, I just told we have three sons. I told our three sons this story not too long ago. So you'd get all dressed up in your snowsuit and everything, and you could barely move, and you felt like the Michelin Man. And she would shove us out the door, and we would have to go out and play. And we would, you had to shovel, because living in a city, you couldn't leave your sidewalk not shoveled, or you would get fined. So we would shovel in and make what we thought were mountains of snow between the curb and, maybe 3 feet wide or whatever. And we thought they were so high, and we would, dig caves into them and stuff. And I think that was some of the happiest times, although it was cold. Um, and we couldn't come back in until my mom said. So we used to huddle by the front door and just kind of shiver, like, please let us in, But I really think that was one of the happiest memories that I have.
That's great. Hey, give me some areas where you think the Georgia Republican Party needs to improve.
Well, we need to increase membership. So we have to figure out why people and younger generation, I don't know how old you are, Steve, or whatever, but I would say those 30 something, 40 somethings, even, they don't join clubs. They might say, well, I'm Republican because I vote Republican, but they're not members of the Republican Party. We need to increase membership. We need to increase money. And just having fundraisers once in a while that are dinners with our wonderful speakers. I've been to several. Maybe we need those wonderful speakers spread out across the entire state of Georgia in a less expensive, more affordable way for people to come and meet and greet and hear from influential politicians, or even like Sean Hannity type people, or things like that they would be interested in coming to, and wouldn't cost a whole lot of money. We need to get more corporate sponsors to help us, because if they're going to run a business in Georgia and they like the way Georgia is run, then they're going to help us pay for campaigns to keep Georgia red. And I don't think we reach out to the Home Depots, the Coca-Colas, the Kias, the Bank of America, the other, I'll call them the big boys that call Georgia home. Even the movie industries. I mean, we have a fantastic movie industry, and I mean, they want to keep low taxes or no taxes. You would think that they would want to help us and give us some money, but I really like to increase membership, increase money. um I would also like to be a little more outspoken and a little bolder. We have a tendency to stay in the background, not say too much because we don't want to get sued. I've been sued by Joe Biden. I mean, so come on. I mean, we're going to get sued. We have lawyers. Just hire better ones or more or whatever. Um, but I really think we need to get our message out a little louder and a little more, about how wonderful it is to have a Republican state and the Republican platform, how great it is for raising a family and starting a small business and living in the state of Georgia. I maybe also, I don't want to say a newsletter, but maybe just bullet points of what we did this month. And just so people know, I mean, I'm on the state committee and I have been for years. I have no clue what projects other than the convention that we're working on right now. I mean, I think people who are involved in the party should know that kind of thing. Um, it's not a whole lot of big things. It's things that just need to be addressed.
Well,
That
what's one area where the party is really doing it right?
Oh, that's going to be hard for me to answer. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if the party is doing anything really right. I mean, we don't stay in touch with our legislators because they're going on a retreat the same weekend we're having our convention. So none of our House members are going to be able to attend. So we need to have more dialogue between our Republican elected officials and the party. I also think, and this isn't something we're doing well, um, the Republican Party should be the giant umbrella and everything else under it. We have an awful lot of spin off groups and clubs that are not really part of the Georgia Republican Party. Um, they may have Republican in their name or whatever, but we're also not, we need to be more like a happy family instead of a divided family. We need to sit down at the kitchen table and we need to discuss the issues and we need to talk to our legislators. They have R's next to their name. We should be talking to them all the time. They should be talking to us. What do they need from us? What do we need from them? um, Businesses. Okay. We have lots of regulations and rules in the state and laws in the state of Georgia. What do they need to have a better business, or what's working well for them? I think communications, we need to have a better, a better line of communications with everyone who considers themselves Republican in this state. We also need to, I know it's hard, but we need to get into the school system. We need to be in the schools. We need to help their not election, their education, the boards of education and stuff. We need to be at their meetings. We need to be vocal and say, this is the classical education is the way that we're um, going. The one thing I can say about the Georgia Republican Party is that we exist. We are here. We just need to be a little more forthcoming.
As a
So,
Republican
mhm,
and a potential first vice chair, um,
mhm.
what is your expectations of Republican elected officials?
Well, first of all, they should follow our platform because they have to sign an oath for that in order to qualify, in order to run for office. So it says the oath, they have to sign it, and they have to say that they will uphold the platform of the Republican Party. Now, maybe we should put it out there more of what the platform is so that they know. Um, Not everyone is going to agree with their elected official 100% of the time. So, but if you agree 75% of the time, stop calling them rhinos and stop calling them names and stop threatening them and work with them to maybe you can get to 80% you agree on everything that they're doing. Um, I expect them to be Republicans. I don't expect them to be light Democrats. And I understand, coming from New Jersey, I understand that politics is a give and take. And you are not going to be able to compromise and negotiate for 100% of what you want. So you really have a dialogue and see what you can get past and what you can't. But I do not want, and I've told this to legislators, I want them to do the hard stuff. And I have told a lot of them, you weren't sent here to do the easy things. You were sent here to do the hard things. And I don't want to hear, well, you can't do that because then you won't get reelected. Then maybe you're not the person that should be there if you can't negotiate and you can't come to compromises. But the more Republicans, and most people don't understand this, because if you have a majority Republicans, then you get more seats in other areas. It's kind of like the U.S. Congress right now has a majority Republicans, so therefore the Speaker of the House is Republican, therefore the committee heads are Republicans, therefore things get pushed along to pass for law that are more Republican. Of course, they still have to negotiate with Democrats. So I think people need to understand that also. It's not better to elect a Democrat because you don't like the Republican. It's better to, if you really don't like the Republican, find a candidate, educate that candidate of how to be a good candidate, primary the person, get behind the person that you want, and get the people out to vote. And that's how you have an accountability of your elected officials. The
Well,
accountability comes at the ballot box. So, but there's an awful lot of work that has to be done prior to election day.
well, let me ask you this. We've come out of a presidential election. We're heading towards the congressional midterm election.
Correct.
What is your definition of success for the Georgia Republican Party as we head towards the midterms? What would you consider to be a success?
Um, Having a U.S. senator that's Republican, that would be a major success. So, making retiring John Ossoff, increasing or at least holding, but I would like to increase the number of Republican U.S. congressmen. That would be a major success. Keeping the Georgia Dome Republican and not Democrat, both houses, not just one. Um, we have all of our constitutional officers are up for reelection. So, I mean, we've been very lucky that we have Republican governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, well, and attorney general. So, if we can keep that, or if we lose one of those, I would not. I mean, I wouldn't like it, and but if we did lose one of those, I think if we held the others, we would be able to hold down the fort. Let's put it that way. But honestly, the biggest success would be keeping the U.S. congressmen that we have and maybe adding one or two, and then getting a Republican senator.
Well, let me ask you this. In social media circles, in Republican social media circles, there's been quite a bit of tribalism surrounding the chairman's
Oh,
position.
yeah.
Um, do you identify with one tribe or the other, or are you remaining neutral? What is your position?
I'm remaining neutral. And I get asked this question a lot. And most times the question is, well, how are you going to work if Josh McCoon gets reelected? How are you going to work with him? And then how are you going to work with David Cross if David Cross gets elected? All right. And what I say is I'm being neutral in the chairman's race because I've been to too many forums in too many rooms that they are both there. One stands in one side of the room and one's in the other side, and you could cut the tension in that room with a knife. We need to be able to work together. All right. My personality, I've been dealing with Democrats and independents for over 12 years, and I've still been successful on the elections board and also in passing legislation to change the election laws in the state of Georgia. Uh, I don't like to brag. I've been told not to brag growing up, but I have actually had my words placed into law, which is my greatest accomplishment, I think, as being a Republican in the state of Georgia. But I will figure out how to work with more quieter, introverted type of chairman, which is Josh McCoon. And I will be able to figure out how to work with more gregarious, loud chairman. That's David Cross. Because I raised three sons. Three sons are all different, and then they all have friends. And in the business world, you have to do business with people that some of them are difficult, some of them aren't difficult. So you just have to figure out how to approach them, and that's how I would do it. Now, in another interview that I had, I was being challenged that I would not be able to figure out how to work with one or the other. And so I said, what my Italian background is, I'd get out my spanking spoon. And it was like, what is a spanking spoon? It's a wooden spoon from the kitchen that you're going to get swatted with if you don't do what mom wants you to do. So, I don't think
So,
I will
so,
have to get out the spanking spoon, but there's always
so
that
your
possibility.
so your opinion is you can take the girl out of Jersey, but you can't take Jersey out of the girl. Is that right?
Absolutely. I've been in Georgia for 40 years and I still act more like a Jersey girl than a Georgia girl, but yeah. But
well,
exactly.
well, Alice, we've covered a broad range of things. Is there any other issues that we've left out that we should be talking about that you want to
I
chime
don't
in
think
on?
so, except people have to vote for me. If you want a Georgia Republican Party that is actually going to represent all parts of Georgia at the table of when we're setting out a plan for the 26th election and the 28th election, then you're going to have to vote for me. My other opponents have talents. I don't think they work as hard as I do. And that's nothing against them. That's more about I'm willing and able to lead, and that's what I want to do. So vote for me.
And do you have any communication channels like a website or an X
I
account
have
that you'd like people to look
I
at?
have a Facebook, which is Alice Olenek for Georgia First Vice Chair. I do have a website, which is basically the same, Alice Olenek I think it's for Georgia and then the number one ST First VC. Um, but you can get in touch with me at aliceolenek@gmail.com. That's my personal one of my emails, and anybody who wants to ask me questions can send it there. And I'll answer. I've been answering some of uh, uh, emails that I sent to delegates and alternates, and they'll come back with a question, and I have been answering them. So.
Well, Alice, thank you for taking the time to interview with us. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate your insights that you've given us, and best of luck to you at the state convention.
Thank you so much, Stephen. You have a great evening.
Thank you. Hey, if you enjoyed this conversation that we've had with our candidate going into the state convention, please like and subscribe Share our content with all your friends, especially if you know delegates going to the convention. You want to share this content with them specifically. They need to hear the in-depth, long-form interviews from these people because it's important. They're going to make important decisions. We have the midterm elections coming up. Get this into their hands and let them watch it. Also, we're the only podcast that allows our viewers to do 3-minute short clips on any issue that they feel that's important to them. Just send us your pitch at editorialinterchange.net. We'd be glad to review it. And if we think it works, we'll give you a 3-minute clip on our channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.